Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Coming Down to Earth with Spirit podcast with me, David Hale. Like with Season 1, we will continue talking about all things spiritual in a real and down-to-earth way. So I hope you can join me on my podcast journey so you can learn from my own spiritual journey and experiences with spirit in order to help you on your own spiritual journey and development. So join me now as we get into this episode. Hello everybody and welcome to another Listener Questions episode. Thanks for joining. And in today's episode we have a question from Joanne who asks, can your emotions make a person's transition harder for them if you're with them at the time of passing? So actually I'm going to split this question into two. So I'm going to talk about the person's transition physically whilst you're there with them, and then their transition once they've passed over to the world of spirit. But that might make more sense when I go into more details about that. So, as always, I'll only go from my own personal experience and knowledge with this and give my take on it. Now, I feel like this is a question where you will get different answers from different mediums you speak to. And I know that some mediums will say yes to this based on stories that I've heard from clients of mine that have gone to other mediums before and have been told certain things. My personal view on that, Joanne, is no, because my belief is that a person will transition on their terms. And I think that as much as we want to keep our family here, our friends here, it's not up to us when someone passes. But the grief process is a natural part of when someone passes. So with that said, I don't feel that our natural grief will make it harder for anyone to pass, because my belief is when someone's time is up, it's up, and when they're meant to go, they're meant to go. Sometimes they'll pass with you in the room with them, and I think a lot of people know that you can leave the room for 2 minutes, go and get a cup of tea, and then they pass when no one's with them, because the spirit is that the person, the soul is leaving, it's transitioning on their terms, not on our terms. So I don't believe that our emotions can make a person's transition harder. Physically, yes, they don't necessarily want to leave us, but subconsciously the soul of that person knows when it is time to go, and again, therefore it will leave us. It being the soul or the spirit, whatever you want to call it, will transition on their terms when they are ready, whether we don't want them to go or not, right? Whether we want to go or not. And I've been in that situation. I was with my stepfather when he passed. I was there, my mum was there, my stepbrother was there, and of course it was not a nice thing to see. And yes, we were emotional. However, that was his time to go. He'd been through so much through the illnesses that he had, that was his time to go, whether we were there sobbing, crying or not. It was his time to transition and to be at peace. And that's ultimately what we should want for our loved ones, is for them to be at peace. So my answer is no to that. Okay, that's just my view and my opinion on that. Now, if I come to the second part of what I want to talk about here, is when the person has transitioned. And I'm bringing this up because the example that pops in my head is I had a lady come to me who had been to see another medium, and she'd come to me distraught and quite upset because the medium had told, I don't know who the medium was, so I really don't know. I wasn't told the information. I don't really want to know. But the lady said to me that she's gone to this medium, and the medium had brought through her father, right? And her father had passed to spirit. And the medium decided to tell this lady that her grief for her father's passing had stopped him from transitioning to spirit, as in he's stuck somewhere and hasn't gone through to the light because her grief is keeping him back. Now, many of you listening to this are probably gasping at what I've just said, but that is a true story. And in my view and my opinion, obviously I can't talk about the medium, I don't know who they were, I don't know how they picked up the information, but in my opinion, that's utter rubbish, because grief is a natural thing that we do when someone passes. Whether you cry, whether you don't, it doesn't matter what the grieving process is like for you. Grief is natural. And based on what that medium told that woman, if that's the case, then none of our family members will ever go to spirit, because some of us will grieve for our family members for the rest of our living lives. And so if that's the case, until you die, your family member who's passed over is going to be stuck somewhere. That makes no sense whatsoever. Because the spirit world is where your family are destined to go, and where you're destined to go when you transition. And it's things like that which really drive me mad, because it's just, from my opinion, it's just not true. Your grief is your grief, and you are going to grieve, but it's not going to keep your loved one back from transitioning to the spirit world, going through to the light, because that is where they're meant to go. They're going to go back to a place of peace where there is no pain, there's no suffering, there's no discomfort, there's just love. So, what mediums like that, so where they get that from, I really don't know. It does drive me a bit mad, because those of us that do this work for the best of intentions, we're the ones that have to undo, well, not necessarily undo, but try and make people feel better about what's been said to them before, those horrendous things that have been said to them. And of course, these people are left feeling guilty. This poor woman, who was grieving for her father, she was left feeling really guilty and upset, because she was told that her grief was basically wrong, and that it stops people from, your loved one, from passing over to the spirit world. No, it doesn't. Utter nonsense. So anyway, that's just my take on it, Joanne, and anyone else listening that had that question in mind as well. But no, I say, your grief is natural. Your grief is normal. Just be good to yourself that's all. I always say this. If you're going to grieve, or when you grieve, just be good to yourself when you're doing it. So look after yourself, because some people may go off the rails. They may turn to drink or cigarettes, or not eating properly, not sleeping, or whatever. And those things are not good for us. So when you are grieving, make sure you are good to yourself, so you can have that strength to get through the next phase of your journey with it. All right. Thank you very much for the question, Joanne. Thank you all for listening, and I'll speak to you all soon. Well, there you have it. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard and you found it interesting. There are plenty more episodes to come, so stay tuned, and I'll speak to you all soon.